Hey everybody, this is Shanks from NDD School, and I'm going to be creating some UI tutorials in the future, but first I thought I'd like to start off with just giving a little tour of my own UI. What better place to do that than the greatest instance of all time, Dead Mines. Now to start off, let me say that I have 58 add-ons, and while I don't use all of them on every character, I use most of them on every character. I'll get to the importance of that later in later videos, but some principles that I kept in mind when creating my UI was that, one, I wanted to have maximum view space of my screen. Now a lot of you may be looking at this and thinking, then what is that big bar at the bottom of the screen? That's not actually on my visual screen. If I pull up my little viewport add-on, you can see that there's a black bar or panel at the bottom of the screen that is not covering the screen, but it's pushing it up. The peripherals of the screen get larger as this bar moves up, so I'm actually seeing more screen or more view than if it was a full screen without this black bar. And so this KG panel I have at the bottom here is not actually taking up any of my screen. The only thing it is taking up, or at least any of my view space, the only thing it is taking up is part of my actual screen. But I have a 24-inch monitor, and I can really afford that couple inches at the bottom. Another thing that I was trying to go for is simplicity. I don't want to have fancy stuff on my immediate things. You know, this bar down here, this KG panel is pretty fancy, I suppose, and so is this map, my damage meter. But as far as things that are used during a raid, in a raid encounter, it's pretty simple. I have my Raidframes here, which is just a see-through black bar, and health missing will show up as a red bar starting from the left, which means I don't even see it, I don't even notice it unless somebody is taking damage. You know, my targets are again just very clean, very flat, very even, not fancy at all. The importance of this is that if you're in a raid situation and you're not only trying to do your job, but you're trying to make sure that everybody else is doing their job also, you want to have information on your screen that is not only important, but it is simple and easy to read. A lot of people will have a bunch of useless things on their screen or just like a bunch of flashy stuff. And I will admit to you that I also have done that before. Here's an image of my old UI. As you can see, it's pretty poor. There's a lot of unnecessary and flashy stuff all over the screen. It's very busy, I can't see a lot, and there is no viewport, so that bottom bar is taking up a lot of my screen. It was pretty clunky and it was difficult to raid with. Luckily, I got better at making UIs, and this is what I've come up with now, and I'll show you more on that when I get into an actual raid, and you can see what it looks like when shit hits the fan and there's a bunch of numbers on my screen and information that I need. Next, I want to talk about the add-ons themselves. My unit frames here is Pitbull 4. Now I have my target frame to the right, my frame to the left, target of target in the center, which I use as a tank to show me stacks of the other tanks, which will show up as a debuff icon right here. And then I have a focus frame that will pop up to the left here. My raid frames are VuhDo, which, while I can't really demonstrate to you without being in a raid, I will do that later, so just trust me right now when I say it's VuhDo. Next, my chat add-on is Prat, which is a decent chat add-on, gives me timestamps, I can copy stuff. It's just very good for coloring the class colors of each person, which I find very helpful, especially when you're trying to find people or you have to shift click their name. Next is Bartender, which I use for all my buttons. Now I also use ButtonFacade to remove the border on these buttons, so it's very clean and just kind of sits there nicely. I use SatrinaBuffFrame right here for my buffs at the top. I also use ButtonFacade again to remove the border on them. I use SatrinaBuffFrame to move it over to the right, and it does have a timer, like the standard Blizzard one right there, as you can see. And back to Bartender real quick. I have my buffs here, which I don't use unless I'm in a party, and I don't use Pally Power, but it's just little buttons that I use when I'm not in combat and getting prepared for stuff, like Resurrection, my mounts. Divine Intervention, I don't know why I still have that there. I have that bound to Clique, but, you know, my jewel crafting, and again, I don't know why these are there. Those are all on Clique. And then over here to the left is my micro menu. It's very important to have things like this disappear when you're not using them, because otherwise it's just taking up unnecessary parts of the screen. It's not very clean, it's kind of cluttered. You know, here's my auras right here, and this one doesn't fade out to 100% as you can see, but that's because I kind of like to have a glance of what aura I have on more easily than have it to look up here, which is kind of annoying to pick through all the buffs when it spans out to here on your screen. Next is my map add-on, which is SexyMap, and it's really nice to make sure all your buttons disappear when you take your mouse off of it. I just like to keep the clock there all the time because I sometimes lose track of time when I'm playing, and that can cause sleepless nights, which is bad. Next is Recount, which I have here. To show you, it is not. I do not have that background. For all the people who are going to ask, how did you get the background on Recount? There actually is no background on Recount. And if I can remember, there we go. If I can remember how to unlock it, it's completely clear. That background is just from my kgPanels, which I made in Photoshop. I'll do tutorials later on that, on how to make your own kgPanels and get them in there nice and pretty like. Then I have Omen, which will show up in the right here. And again, it's important as a tank. A lot of people will have their Omen be at the same place as their damage meter and have them switch depending on if you're in combat or out of combat. That's nice, I guess, but personally I like to be able to see my DPS on my DPS tunes or the group's DPS right down here, so that during the raid I can make changes if I need to. I don't want to have to go back and pour through and say what happened and then realize, oh hey, on my rogue I didn't have my poisons on and so my DPS was horrible. I want to be able to see in the middle of crap my poisons were off and I wasn't paying attention, so I can reapply poisons and continue the fight. The other thing with Omen is that, again, it's clean. You can change the background of Omen for a lot of people who didn't know that. And my bars, if I can get into the test phase, are very large and they're class colored. The reason behind that being that if I have somebody like this hunter here who likes to sneak up on my aggro, I can go ahead and drop him a hand salvation so that his threat will go down and I can find him easier in my Raidframes. It's also nice to have them very large so that, again, you don't have to focus on them to figure out, okay, who's sneaking up on me, right? I also have Deadly Boss mods, which should be a standard to everybody's UI or some other boss encounter add-on. I have my bars, my timers show up here, which I guess I can show those real quick. Let me just hit. There we go. So when they have a lot of time left, they'll be here. Then they'll drop down here. I also have my health frames, or the boss's health frames, which will show up here. I have that set so no matter what boss fight I'm in, it will show up. Now a lot of people don't have that set up, but personally, especially when I'm healing, I like to know where the boss is at. I like to be able to tell how much longer I need so I can kind of judge my mana. If you have less mana than the boss has health, unless it's a special fight in which different phases go down less quickly, then you have a problem. You have to be able to manage your mana better and stuff like that. I like to be able to see a nice clean percent representation of where the boss is at.